Firewalk Studios, the development team behind the massive flop Concord, is officially dead, surprising absolutely no one. This is a studio that was founded back in 2018, but plans for Concord were kind of in motion years beforehand. It was sort of back in, according to a developer, in 2016, 8 years ago, that the ideas surrounding Concord began to be conceptualized, and then Firewalk Studios was founded in 2018, and then the game has been in development for the last 4 years or so. And there were great ambitions surrounding it, but alas, it just ended up being a somewhat generic live service that came too little too late. It just kind of retreaded grounds that have already been treaded and didn't do anything to stand out or to really surpass any existing hero shooters. But Sony was very excited about the prospect of this game's success, which is why back in 2021, PlayStation set in motion plans to exclusively publish a multiplayer game from Firewalk Studios, which we would eventually know as Concord, and they even went as far as acquiring Firewalk Studios back in April of 2023, as you can see in this announcement right here. So they had their hopes and dreams on this game, but then we saw results of the open beta, which was completely free. You can see right here that peaked at 2,388 players on Steam, which already suggested a disastrous result. The game then launched with a $40 price point, which many would argue was just not justified because of the lackluster content of Concord, and that only launched to 697 all-time peak concurrent players. Just an absolute disaster. Critically speaking, it scored 62% from 46 critic reviews. The user rating is overwhelmingly negative. On Steam, we can see there's a mixed review score of 69%, nice, from 856 user reviews. And now Concord is no longer available on the Steam store. It is estimated that Concord has only sold a grand total of 25,000 units, 10,000 of which were sold through Steam and 15,000 of which were sold through PlayStation. That's about $1 million in revenue. We don't know the exact budget of this game. Colin Moriarty reports that it was like a $400 million budget in grand total. There are those who doubt that the actual budget was that high, but it was still a AAA game live service that had a substantial budget behind it, and $1 million of revenue is a paltry sum for a game of this scale. And then on top of that, Sony essentially gave that $1 million back when they announced that Concord would be shuttered. They had kind of hinted possibilities that they might explore options that will better reach their players, potentially suggesting that the game could come back, and the only way they'd have to do that would be through like a free-to-play re-release and an overhaul of the game. But at the time of this announcement, which was published on September 3rd, 2024, they announced that Concord sales will cease immediately, and they'll begin offering full refunds for all gamers who purchase the game for PlayStation 5 or PC, no questions asked, which means that this game made literally $0 in revenue. However much this game cost, that was all sunk and kind of flushed down the toilet. This is about as disastrous as a AAA launch can get. Numbers so paltry that the game shut down exactly 2 weeks after its launch. I've not seen anything quite like this. Without question, one of the biggest flops in AAA history, maybe the biggest one. Now, there was speculation circulating that Concord might come back when Insider Gaming noticed that Concord continued to get updates on Steam after its shutdown. They posted screenshots here showing that developers have kind of been working on the game and kind of just updating elements of it, and you can go to SteamDB and see for yourself that even after it's shut down, we're seeing just little things kind of being implemented to the game. But alas, this game was never meant to come back, and that's kind of what I predicted would happen. A disaster of this scale just doesn't get a green light when we're talking about such a high risk for a brand new IP that got so little attention that it only sold 25,000 units. And so, to the shock and surprise of no one, it is now official that Sony has closed down Firewalk Studios alongside another studio called Neon Koi. Jason Schreier first reported on this, saying that Concord developer Firewalk Studios and mobile game maker Neon Koi will be shutting down. Sony will be closing them, and that'll result in 210 people losing their jobs, a spokesperson tells Bloomberg News. Firewalk had 172 employees, while Neon Koi had 38. And this is further reported in his article where he talks about all of this. A rainy day indeed over at Sony and PlayStation, and certainly for Firewalk Studios. Now, speaking of rainy days, you know what's great to have during rainy days? Waterproof shoes. Which brings us to the sponsor of today's video, Vessi, makers of stylish, innovative, waterproof shoes that I've been daily driving for years now. They've got tons of different styles to choose from for every occasion that I've worn and showcased in the past, but the one that I got for you right here is the title sneaker. Perfect for the current ongoing fall season when the weather can be unpredictable and waterproof shoes can come in handy. These are super clean, sleek, and go with tons of outfits. Not to mention that they're really easy to put on and really comfortable to wear thanks to the use of Dymatex technology that make the shoes lightweight, flexible, and breathable, all while fully maintaining their waterproof properties. And when I say waterproof, I mean waterproof. I've tried all kinds of tests and experiments to see just how well these shoes repel water. And I mean, yeah, they have yet to fail me, this model and all previous ones that I've used. Now, in Los Angeles, which is where I live, rain isn't commonplace, but every once in a while, a rainy day will sneak up on us, so wearing Vessis means that I'm always prepared for such occasions and never have to worry about the possibility of having to deal with soggy socks and wet feet. And with the title sneakers in particular, I get to embrace the fall season with confident panache. I genuinely love how cool these shoes look. Definitely one of my favorite models so far. And yeah, I mean, there's just a good reason why I've been daily driving Vessis for such a long time. And you can get your title sneakers or find a style that suits you by using my link, vessi.com/yongyeah, while getting 15% off your first purchase at checkout. Anyway, back to the news. Beyond Bloomberg's report, we got a blog post right here from Sony Interactive Entertainment co-CEO Herman Hulst, who published the following on October 29th, 2024 on the official SonyInteractive.com website, where he said, "We have had to make a difficult decision relating to two of our studios, Neon Koi and Firewalk Studios. Specifically relating to Firewalk Studios, he said, as announced in early September, certain aspects of Concord were exceptional." That word seems like a bit of a hyperbole and not one that many would use to describe the game. But he continues, "But other aspects did not land with enough players, and as a result, we took the game offline. We have spent considerable time these past few months exploring all our options. After much thought, we have determined the best path forward is to permanently sunset the game and close the studio. I want to thank all of Firewalk for their craftsmanship, creative spirit, and dedication. The PvP first-person shooter genre is a competitive space that's continuously evolving, and unfortunately, we did not hit our targets with this title. We will take the lessons learned from Concord and continue to advance our live service capabilities to deliver future growth in this area." So yeah, for a time, they were potentially thinking about bringing Concord back, as they hinted at in their original statement, where they said that they're exploring options, including those that will better reach our players. But as I said in past videos, there's just no world in which it'd be a smart strategy to risk so much money and time and resources and manpower into trying to relaunch this game that has just so much negative optics and a complete lack of interest. Now, it bothers me that he says right here that we'll take lessons learned from Concord, and then in the same sentence says we'll continue to push for live services. And I'm just like, can you just dial back on that aspect and just like do what you guys are best at, which is those amazing single-player, story-driven campaign experiences? And if you do want to pursue a live service, don't do what you're doing now, which is spreading yourself too thin by making too many live services. Recall that at one point, Sony planned for 12 live service games by 2026, and they had to cut that in half to 6. But even then, that's just too many live services for the span of like a year and a half. It just feels like they're shooting darts with the hope that one of them will hit the bullseye. And that's just not a great approach. If you have an idea for a live service that is inspired, then great. But it just feels like they're chasing whatever trends they can chase until one of them happens to be the thing that blows up and, ends up being their big revenue maker. But along the way, there's just going to be a lot of failures that's going to result in financial disaster, studio shutdowns, and employees laid off for ill-conceived ventures that were planned by leadership that will just lead studios astray, I feel. Studios who are just not specialized in the making of live services. It doesn't feel like they're learning lessons from Concord. It just feels like they were gambling on this methodology eventually working if they repeat this process enough times. And it's true that they do need to strike gold one time, and that will generate them potentially billions of dollars. But that's still a very risky venture in this oversaturated market. Just make one maybe really good live service and try to make something that is kind of pushing the boundaries of what a live service could accomplish. But right now it just feels like they're shooting the shit and just kind of not really doing anything for the sake of like artistic inspiration, but for the sake of chasing this trend and trying to just get a piece of the pie and rushing into this market that will lead to just more results like these, as has happened with so many other live services we've seen launch in the past from a wide variety of studios and publishers. Understand the confidence with which Sony backed Concord. They acquired the whole studio believing that this would become their next big billion-dollar IP, that this could be as big as Star Wars essentially from the outset, without testing the waters first, just putting all their eggs in this basket, or so many eggs in this basket. And look how that turned out. Sony just isn't approaching the live service market in an intelligent way. To close things off, here's a statement from Firewalk Studios, who tweeted the following on the day that the studio shutdown was announced. They said, "Firewalk is signing off one last time. Firewalk began with the idea of bringing the joy of multiplayer to a larger audience. Along the way, we assembled an incredible team who were able to navigate growing a new startup into a team during a global pandemic. Firewalk was founded in 2018 and was very small for its first couple of years, only entering full production in 2022. Build a new, customized, next-generation FPS engine in Unreal Engine 4 to 5, delivering top-tier gameplay feel, beautiful worlds, and a performant 60 FPS technical experience on a stable and scalable backend on PlayStation 5 and PC to hundreds of thousands of players in our beta." They definitely missed the mark there by a long shot. "Manage an acquisition/integration while readying technical and preliminary tests, and ultimately ship and deliver a great FPS experience to players, even if it landed much more narrowly than hoped against the heavily consolidated market. We took some risks along the way, marrying aspects of card battlers and fighting games with first-person shooters. And although some of these and other aspects of the IP didn't land as we hoped, the idea of putting new things into the world is critical to pushing the medium forward. The talent at Firewalk and the level of individual craft is truly world-class, and teams within Sony Interactive Entertainment and across the industry will be fortunate to work with them. Please reach out to recruiting at PlayStation for inquiries, and thank you to all the very many teams, partners, and fans who supported us along the way. See you in the Tempest, Firewalk Studios, and Transmission." For me, it just feels like the concept of Concord is where things went awry, but I genuinely do believe that there are talented people within Firewalk Studios that were just making the wrong product. I feel like if the ideas of what they were making, if what they were crafting on a conceptual level was just more interesting and more boundary pushing, they could have done something really cool. It's just they happen to be making just the most generic version of a live service you could make in the year 2024, or they launched the game too late, or they just made a game that ultimately could not stand up to similar games of the genre, who were just much further ahead, much more feature complete, and did everything that Concord does, but better. And so I really do hope that these developers land on their feet and get to work something that really gets to realize the full potential of their talents, because I feel like Concord just wasn't that. The direction that Concord went into, and reports of like this toxic positivity mentality that Colin Moriarty talked about. It was internally referred to as the future of PlayStation, with Star Wars-like potential and a deaf culture of toxic positivity that halted any negative feedback. Stuff like that was corroborated also by Ethan Gatch. He said, "I can corroborate the part about toxic positivity. Some sources I've spoken with blamed a head in the sand mentality carried over from the studio's Bungie roots, a sense that the game would come together because the team was too good to fail. So much of what led Concord astray was essentially leadership ego. This belief that they're just too good because they worked on some of the greatest games prior to their current studio, because they worked at Bungie. They believe that nothing they could do could fail, and the feedback from beneath them just wasn't worth it because their vision is what mattered, even if everyone outside of leadership could see that there had to be some kind of course correction for this game to have any semblance of a chance of succeeding. But they just kind of, as was stated, they dug their heads into sand and refused to listen to all of the red flags and all of the signs that indicated that this is just how this was going to end, without any sort of adjustments, without any sort of redirection. So yeah, this is truly the end of Firewalk Studios and Concord. This is truly the end of this saga that I've been reporting on, and I don't suspect we'll have much more to say about this tale, aside from potential future reports of what went on behind the scenes, but generally it's known kind of what happened behind the scenes. And so this is all she wrote. This is kind of what you need to know, and this is the unceremonious end to an ambitious endeavor and venture that I wish could have panned out, that I wish could have been more compelling. But alas, I think it ultimately just fell in all of the live service trappings and all of the trend-chasing trappings that it's just not viable in this oversaturated market, and leadership just didn't heed the warning signs enough to be able to steer the ship away from the iceberg and into an inevitable sinking and tragedy and massive flop. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is everything you need to know about the cautionary tale that Concord is. It certainly does not make me feel optimistic about PlayStation and Sony's future live service endeavors, but I suppose only time will tell. In the meantime, let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on this whole Concord and Firewalk Studios situation, where things went astray, and what you think prospects look like for Sony's future live service endeavors. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.